On the morning of August 2, 1721, the bustling streets of Boston fell silent as a single child's fever rose so high it seemed to touch the sky, heralding a smallpox epidemic that would become the crucible for America's first recorded experiment with inoculation. The city, a cramped port teeming with merchants, sailors, and families packed into timber frame homes, had long lived under the shadow of contagious diseases. Smallpox, the most feared of them all, arrived on ships from Europe, its variola virus riding the wind and waves. In the years preceding 1721, Boston had already endured 3 devastating outbreaks, each leaving a trail of scarred skin and lost lives. Physicians relied on bloodletting, purgatives, and prayer, methods as ineffective as they were desperate. Mortality rates hovered between 15 and 30%, and the disease's disfiguring pustules turned survivors into living reminders of the epidemic's cruelty. Enter Dr. Zabdiel Boylston, a Harvard-trained physician whose curiosity was sparked by a pamphlet from England describing the practice of variolation, deliberately introducing material from smallpox sores into the skin of healthy individuals to induce a mild infection and subsequent immunity. The technique, borrowed from Ottoman physicians and refined in the Ottoman Empire centuries earlier, had recently been championed in England by Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, who witnessed its success among her Turkish contacts. Boylston, however, faced a colony steeped in fear and superstition. The idea of purposefully infecting a patient was tantamount to heresy. The first recorded trial began on July 14, 1721, when Boylston, under the watchful eye of the clergyman and advocate of inoculation, Cotton Mather, took a bold step. He selected a 6-year-old orphan named James Gray, whose mother consented after Mather's impassioned sermons about divine providence and the moral duty to protect the community. Boylston pricked James's arm with a needle threaded with material from a smallpox pustule of a recently deceased patient, then bound the wound to contain the nascent infection. The fever spiked within days and James's body shivered with the hallmark rash of the disease. Yet, unlike the raging epidemics that tore through the city, his symptoms remained mild. After 10 days, the pustules dried and James emerged with a faint scar, an emblem of his newfound immunity. Boylston's triumph, however, was not met with applause. Rumors spread that he was playing God, and a mob gathered outside his home, brandishing torches and demanding that he cease his unholy experiments. Undeterred, Boylston expanded his trial, inoculating a total of 247 patients over the next 2 months, including his own son and 2 of Mather's grandsons. The outcomes were striking. Only 6 inoculated individuals died, a mortality rate of roughly 2.4%, dramatically lower than the 15–30% death toll among those who contracted the disease naturally. Boylston meticulously recorded each case, noting the duration of fever, the progression of lesions, and the speed of recovery. His data, though rudimentary by modern standards, provided compelling evidence that controlled exposure could confer protection. Amid the growing controversy, a young physician named Dr. John Williams performed what may be considered one of America's earliest documented autopsies on a smallpox victim who had not been inoculated. The body, brought to Boylston's modest clinic, revealed a landscape of hemorrhagic lesions that had penetrated deep into the dermis, while the lungs were congested with fluid, a sign of secondary pneumonia, a frequent cause of death in smallpox patients. Williams noted the virus's predilection for the epithelial linings, describing the storm of pustules that erupted across the skin like a field of white lilies, each harboring the infectious material that would soon be expelled into the air. The autopsy report circulated among Boston's medical community, reinforcing the urgency of finding a preventative measure. It also underscored the paradox that inoculation, though it induced a mild form of the disease, allowed physicians to observe the virus's progression within a controlled environment. offering insights that were otherwise impossible in the chaos of a full-blown epidemic. As the summer waned, the city's death toll finally began to decline. By October, the epidemic had claimed roughly 844 lives out of an estimated 20,000 inhabitants, a sobering figure that nonetheless paled in comparison to the potential devastation of an unchecked outbreak. Public opinion, once hostile, softened as families who had lost loved ones saw the stark difference between naturally acquired smallpox and the relatively benign course of inoculation. Boylston's practice spread beyond Boston, reaching other New England towns, and the technique found adherents in Philadelphia and Charleston. The ripple effect of Boylston's work extended far beyond colonial borders. In 1796, Edward Jenner would harness the principle of variolation, substituting cowpox for smallpox to create the first true vaccine, a method that would eventually eradicate smallpox worldwide. Yet the seed of that triumph was sown on the cramped streets of Boston in 1721, when a physician dared to turn the most feared disease into a tool for salvation. In the centuries that followed, the legacy of the Boston smallpox outbreak became a cornerstone of American medical history. It illustrated the power of empirical observation, the courage to challenge entrenched beliefs, and the profound impact of a single decision made in a modest clinic. The outbreak also served as a cautionary tale about the social resistance that pioneers of medicine often confront, a narrative echoed in every subsequent battle against disease. Today, as modern vaccines protect us from influenza, COVID-19, and countless other pathogens, we stand on the shoulders of Zabdiel Boylston, Cotton Mather, and the brave patients who endured the first intentional exposures. Subscribe to the Autopsy Files for more stories like this.